As always, we had some pretty nice trades in the daily market breakdowns this past week. Now let's get right into this Forex forecast. All right, starting the forecast off with the DXY, the US dollar. Just want to remind you guys, we have a pretty nice looking daily uptrend. We did end up removing the high here, but to me, it looks like it's some sort of fake out to the upside. It doesn't mean that we won't continue up. It could just be that temporary fake out after we broke the high, and we could definitely continue up. Now, a reminder as well, if we go over to the weekly chart here, you can see, if you guys remember from forecast back in February, I pointed out this supply area right here. We had a nice reaction off of it, and I think the reason we are probably slowing down on the dollar strength as well is due to the fact that we have come in contact with this weekly supply for a second time. Now, with the supply and demand trading methodology, every time a zone is tested like this, it becomes weaker in theory. So I am expecting this based on that daily trend. As long as we can continue that daily trend, I am actually expecting this to kind of break. But I think we are seeing it slow down due to the fact that that weekly supply is there. If you look at a 4-hour chart, we caught this change of direction here. We had price pull down, nice little 4-hour demand zone, beautiful move off of that zone that was called out in the daily market breakdown video. And then we ended up breaking this demand zone eventually with this supply. And you can see pretty nice reaction. But if you look, if I zoom out, you can clearly see this beautiful 4-hour trend line, and it is still holding. You can see we did test it here, kind of peaked below, and it definitely is holding. A sign for me that we could continue to go up is if we pushed up and broke this supply. And I would like that. I would actually prefer to see something like this, where we not only break the supply, but also the high. If we have a new 4-hour demand zone there, that could be where we see the dollar turn around at again. But in the meantime, we are seeing supply zones being respected. It is a little bit more evident here on the 1-hour chart as we push cleanly to the supply and got that reaction off of that as well. And that is actually another zone that I point out in the daily market breakdown videos. So pretty important zones in my opinion. But remember guys, we have that nice daily trend, and there's really, based on that daily chart, there's really no signs of it turning around. But like I said, when we go to these lower time frames like the 1-hour chart, you can really start to see price turn around. But we have to remember the bigger picture, the higher time frames, and that daily trend is looking pretty strong. So I wouldn't be surprised to see price push back up to here and maybe break the supply zone. And like I said earlier, we kind of have to be going off of the 4-hour chart. If we continue to push up and we break the supply, that would be pretty bullish in my opinion. If in fact we do break this upward trend line, maybe leaving us with a supply zone there, then I would say, hey, maybe that's enough evidence to suggest, going back to the daily chart, if we break that 4-hour trend, that could be enough evidence to suggest we might break this trend line, or at least come close to testing this upward trend line on the daily chart. So hopefully all this makes sense. On the DXY, remember, beautiful trend to the upside here. It doesn't mean we won't retrace and pull back up. So we're really at this time monitoring the 4-hour and the daily trend here on the DXY. All right, onto the forecast for the Euro USD. And if you guys don't mind, hit that like and subscribe button. Remember, all of the revenue generated in these weekly Forex Forecast videos are donated to my local hospice. So every like helps, would be much appreciated. Looking forward to make another donation at the end of this month, and it's all thanks to you guys. So really, really appreciate it. Anyways, onto the Euro here. We have a pretty sideways market here on the Euro. Unlike usually the Euro and the DXY are opposite of each other, obviously, but we didn't break this low, and we don't have a trend line here. For trend lines, I'm not going to get into detail, but we didn't break the low, so there's really no trend line there in my opinion. Nice move off of this daily zone now, and now we're kind of just sitting between supply and demand like we've done a few times, so not much to go off of this Euro daily chart, I'll be honest with you guys. And if you look at a 4-hour chart here, we clearly broke this supply zone there, and it was proven supply with this demand down below at 1.077. So if you are bullish the Euro, this would really be the only area I would be interested in getting in long on this 4-hour chart for a few reasons. One, well, there's no trend on the daily chart, so trading in a 1-hour zone or is not the highest odds situation because we're sitting in between supply and demand. So this is really the best pullback entry. I mean, look at this zone, pretty tight, clean basing, a nice rally base, rally demand zone. Look at the move away here. beautiful move away, kind of maybe a trap setup here as well. So we definitely could see a move off of that 4-hour demand zone on the euro. We could be, when we get down to here, looking for day trading longs on day trading time frames, like on a 15-minute chart as well. That is definitely an option. And if you look at a 1-hour chart here, this is more of the refined 1-hour zone right here inside of that 4-hour zone. So it's a little bit riskier, but it is a tighter 1-hour zone we could see a move off of. And look, if you're bearish, I like to give both aspects of the trade, because some people are bearish, some people are bullish. So I like to offer both perspectives. If you are bearish, I think it's well worth waiting for this 1-hour supply at 1.08 to be hit first, and then we could look for shorts. That's really the only selling setup that I am seeing at this point on the euro. I wouldn't say it's super risky because there's really no trend on the daily or anything. So it's kind of, you could be playing both at this point. I don't really disagree. So to summarize again, we could be waiting for pullbacks down like the 1.785 area on the 4-hour and the 1-hour chart for longs. For shorts, we could be using this supply zone, especially if you're a day trader. It could be really, really good for shorts. And if, let's say we don't pull back to down to there and you're bullish, maybe you have an order down here on the euro and maybe it comes down here, we don't quite get filled or something like that, and we push up, let's say we break the supply, we break the high here, any 1-hour zone there on the euro could be used for longs as well. But that'll have to be for another video because it hasn't taken place yet. I'm just trying to show you guys a bunch of different options here on the euro for trading. That would be the highest odds situation. Remember guys, any questions at all, do not hesitate to leave a comment down into the comments down below. I will respond to every comment. On to the forecast for gold. Reminder, beautiful weekly trend here. We have fresh weekly demand down at 2041. Doesn't really look like we're getting a pullback. We do have a new rally base rally here with two very, very bullish candles here on gold. I am not surprised to see this move, but in theory, with these two very aggressive moves up, we are due for that pullback. How deep the pullback we will get, who knows? And remember, when I say we are due for a pullback, that certainly does not mean it's guaranteed. Just like when somebody trades the RSI or whatever that's called, just because it's overextended to the upside doesn't mean we're pulling back, and just because it's lower doesn't mean we're going to pull up, right? But look at the strength, look at the trends here, looking very, very good here on gold. Beautiful daily trends here as well. Unfortunately for the daily chart, we only have two daily zones down at 21.93 and 21.32. So I'm not sure if we're gonna get those pullbacks. If we can create new demand here with another leg up, we'll have a new zone here. Stay tuned for next week's forecast for that, because that's really all I'm seeing as far as daily zones here go on gold. But definitely looking pretty strong. If you look at a 4-hour, or sorry, we'll go to the 1-hour chart first. We caught this beautiful 1-hour demand zone trade. Right here, we had two zones on top of each other. Both were pretty decent. So we got that beautiful trade, almost 5-to-1 hits so far. That was called out in the daily market breakdown video. If you guys want access to those breakdown videos, it's basically what I'm doing here on YouTube, these forecasts, but throughout the week. So check it out. Links in the description down below. We have video lessons, Sunday Zoom sessions, a bunch of learning tools. So check it out. We'll be happy to see all traders join the team. And if you look now, we do have demand down at 22.96. This could be your nearest pullback entry on gold. Something like that, we could see a move off that zone. It's almost a reaction off of this zone, so it's not the highest odds. I actually do like the zone down below at 22.60, but this is our nearest zone at 22.96. So it could be a good area to look for day trading longs in. And look, if we get another leg up, something like this, it's very possible. Gold's just been pushing up. If we get another leg up, we'll have another zone here. We could be looking for longs in there. So it's really longs all the way. It's one of those rare times where we do have a 4-hour trend, 1-hour trend, weekly trend, daily trend. You know, all signs are pointing to the upside, and I'm not really seeing any evidence of price, you know, pulling back. We actually have a new demand zone there in the 4-hour chart as well. So that 1-hour zone actually just became a little bit better because it's now a 4-hour zone as well. So this would be our nearest pullback entry. And even if we don't get the pullback entry, we could, in theory, up here, be continuing to look for longs on a 15-minute or a 5-minute time frame as well. But remember, it's always higher odds to be trading inside of our higher time frames, just like the 4-hour zone here and the 4-hour zone down there that we also caught. So a lot of potential here on gold. Trends to the upside looking very, very strong. Like I said, it's pretty much longs on all time frames here on gold, even if we get those big pullbacks on the daily and on the weekly chart, which is I'm actually really, really hoping for. So in the meantime, could be day trading long, swing trading long on gold, looking to get pullbacks to demand zones. Alrighty, on to the forecast for the USDJPY. Reminder, last week we did break the high end supply here on the USDJPY, so it's looking really good as far as a weekly perspective goes. Now we do have the demand down below at 149.16 on the weekly chart. It is definitely possible we get that pullback down to that zone and retrace back to the upside, but really not seeing a lot of evidence to suggest we will be doing that just yet. Reminder as well, we have a daily zone that is inside that weekly chart as well, so we could easily pull back down the 149.15 area, but again, I'm not seeing too much evidence of that taking place just yet. If we come to a 4-hour chart, you can see we were pretty much in a sideways mess for a long time, and we still are. I'm really not liking this. That's why I really prefer the pullbacks down to the 149 areas, like I was just saying, because if you guys have been following me for a while, I absolutely hate trading in a sideways market. You can see, okay, yes, we did have a zone respected here and respected from back here, but it's just nothing's really holding and moving that much. We even had a little supply zone there that was burned through as well. So not much to go off of this 4-hour chart. I'll definitely admit that the USDJPY hasn't really been on my radar. I track the zones for all the members anyways, but it has not been on my radar for trading personally. What I like to see here though on the 1-hour chart, it's somewhat decent. We have to keep in mind the higher time frames like the 4-hour chart. It is still sideways like I was just saying, so we have to keep that in mind. But if you look at the 1-hour chart here, we had a decent little downward trend line here, and it was actually removed. It was removed by this demand zone here at 151.41. So a pullback down to there, it would be definitely an aggressive entry, but we could see a move off of that 1-hour zone right there. And if not, we have a backstop zone down at 150.98. So if we break through this, maybe stop everyone out here, that's fine. We have another zone down here that we could be looking to get in long at as well. So these are two zones that I would say aren't the highest odd situation. I don't mind the zones. I think that this is a pretty nice rally-based rally. We have a nice move away. It broke a trend line, and it also broke a supply zone. So as far as that, I think it's somewhat decent, especially this zone down here. But again, with the higher time frames like the 4-hour chart, I don't like the sideways action, but hopefully since we have a nice weekly and daily trend line that looks something like this, hopefully that kind of trumps everything on the 4-hour chart, and we could look to get in long at these two zones down there on the USDJPY. On to the forecast for the GBPUSD. So we have a supply zone above at 1.27, and we had the demand zone down below at 1.25. Now we're kind of sitting pretty much dead right in the middle. So what that means is there's not a lot to go off of here, but I will say profit margin to the upside would be to this supply zone at 1.27, and profit margin to the downside would be to the demand zone at 1.25. So since we're sitting in the middle on the daily chart, we're going to have to go down to the lower time frames. You can see right away in this 1-hour chart, we had a pretty nice 1-hour zone that was directly responsible for breaking this 1-hour downtrend. This is the power of supply and demand, guys. And by the way, let me know your thoughts on the British pound in the comments down below. I want to see where you guys think it is headed. So this trade has already worked out. I believe I called this one on the daily market breakdown video as well. And for now, we basically need to see this higher moved, because then we'll have a pretty nice looking 1-hour trend to the upside, and we could be looking for longs on day trading timeframes. Yes, since this 1-hour demand zone's in control, if we get a pullback and there's a little zone right here, we could see a move off of some day trading zones since the 1-hour demand zone is in control. What is making me a little nervous about that though is the fact that this downward trend line in the 4-hour chart is still holding. Now, it's a pretty good trend line. We are testing it again pretty much for the third time, and due to this strength, I think we could actually break it. It's not super clear though, so we have to be definitely trading with caution. The safest bet for longs would be to see something like this, where maybe we break the downward trend line and then we look for a long off of that 4-hour zone. So we definitely have to be trading with caution. I don't really disagree if you're saying, hey, look at this nice 4-hour downtrend, I want to day trade that. So if you're on a 15-minute time frame or a 5-minute time frame, as long as this downward trend line is holding, we could be looking for shorts on those time frames. I would definitely stay away from looking for shorts on a 1-hour chart or a 4-hour chart based on the fact that there's no trend on the daily or the weekly. So to be clear, as long as this downward trend line is holding, I don't really disagree with shorts. But remember, if we on day trading time frames, remember, if we break the trend line, then we definitely have to be a little bit more cautious. And remember, back to the daily chart, this is where I think price could start to slow down. So I think it's a decent daily zone. I definitely think we could react off of it, but it doesn't mean we can't get in long on day trading timeframes up to there. And remember, profit margin to the daily supply and profit margin to the daily demand if you are looking for shorts here on the British pound. Remember, let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on the pound. I know I'm giving both perspectives, but I think it's important since a lot of people are probably looking, oh, I think we're going to get in short, I think we're going to get in long. I just like to point out the highest odds areas for both directions. On to the forecast for the USDCAD. So we had finally we broke the daily supply. This was a supply zone tested once, twice, three, basically 5 times. So it's a pretty significant move in my opinion. I'm not really calling this a trend, but what I will say is it's clear that the momentum is now to the upside, especially with the removal of this daily supply. But we don't have much to go off of here, so we are going to go down to the lower time frames. If you look on a 4-hour chart, we broke above this high, so the USDCAD was not looking great. If you look here, if I kind of highlight this here, you can clearly see we were pretty much just going sideways. It was looking pretty bad. But we did actually spike above here, and we got a nice reaction off the supply zone. I'm not too surprised. It's kind of a resistance trap here where all these support and resistance traders are looking to trade that, and they're probably all stopped out here into this pretty nice fresh 4-hour supply zone that I've had on my chart since last November. So beautiful move off of that supply zone. I'm not sure if any of the members caught any quick trades off of that zone. I don't really think it's going to push all the way back down. I'll be honest with you guys. I think that this was just pretty much a temporary move to kind of manipulate the markets. So with the trend being to the upside, we pretty much, the safest bet would be to wait for this supply zone to be taken out, especially since it's proven supply. That's what I really like to see. So if we can get this proven supply taken out, any 4-hour zone there, we could be looking for longs off of. Remember, I will have these zones on the charts for all of the channel members. So that's another benefit. You will get my zones. So nice 4-hour trend to the upside, which also means we have a 1-hour trend as well. So if you want to get aggressive and you don't want to wait for what I just said, remember, there's nothing wrong with being aggressive. It's just aggressive, and it might be time. Like since the supply is in control up here, it would be aggressive to get in long at this 1-hour zone at 1.35, but we certainly could see a move off this zone. It is responsible for not only removing supply, but also a downward trend line that was tested multiple times as well. So it is definitely a decent little 1-hour zone. So it would be aggressive, but we could look for longs there. Remember, aggressive isn't horrible. It just means maybe risk a little bit less, or maybe don't trade it at all, or just maybe look for extra confirmation, right? Aggressive is not a bad thing. It just means that your win rate could be a little bit less on setups like this. But you're pretty much, it would be anticipating the removal of this high, and I think it's a decent little aggressive setup. So I'm not really seeing any shorting setups. If we can, maybe we push down here, we break the demand zones here, and any 1-hour supply there, maybe we could look for shorts off of that, but I'm not really seeing that right now, and I think looking for longs is going to be our best decision based on that 1-hour zone, or if we can create new 4-hour zones there on the USDCAD. All right, on to the forecast for the AUDUSD, the Aussie US dollar. So we have the daily supply above. We failed to break the low here, which would have created a pretty beautiful downward trend line. So we failed to do that, which is pretty evident in my opinion. Not a lot of evidence to suggest we will be pulling back up to this supply, but remember guys, supply and demand kind of acts as a magnet in my opinion. So we definitely could be attracted back to this area, especially since, look, yes, this zone was tested, but only with a wick. I think, you know, maybe the banks want to push price back up and rally back off of that zone again for a second time. It's definitely possible. We're going to go down to the lower time frames and see what is taking place. If you go to the 1-hour chart here, we do have a 1-hour supply that is currently in control. We did get a nice move off of it so far, but it was tested pretty much 100% of the way in. So it is not looking great. If you do believe we will push back up to that daily supply, you could wait for a pullback down to this zone at 0.65 right there. Nice little demand zone where we could get a move off of that zone. I think it's also possible if the US dollar gets strong as well that we could break this zone. So that's definitely something to consider here on the Aussie US dollar. If you look at a 4-hour chart, I actually think the 4-hour chart is much more clean and clear. So we had the downward trend line, it was removed, left us with a supply zone that removed demand. So if you're bearish, this would pretty much be our supply zone we could look for shorts off of at 0.66. That's really all I'm looking at here for shorts on the Aussie. So if you're bullish, a pullback down to this zone at 0.652 in the 4-hour chart is decent. I think we could see a move off that zone, maybe push back up to supply. And let's say we don't get this pullback down to that zone. That's fine. Let's say we break through the supply, break the high. Any 4-hour zone there, we could look for longs at, especially on day trading timeframes, using a confirmation entry strategy on the day trading timeframes to basically maximize your risk to reward as we potentially pull back up to that daily supply that is much higher. But until we can break this supply zone on the 4-hour chart, I'm not really seeing a lot of evidence to suggest that we will be pulling back up to that daily supply that's at 0.665. So again, if we break that high in the 4-hour chart, create new demand zones, then I think we could be pulling back up to the supply, and we probably be pushing at least above where it was previously tested, maybe 50% of the way in. So we do have profit margin to the upside, and obviously we have profit margin to the downside as we could break that low there. But in my opinion, the best thing and the safest thing to do is to just be monitoring that 4-hour chart and looking to trade these zones on the 4-hour chart that I was pointing out, and waiting for significant moves to the upside to really prove to us that we will be pulling back up to the daily supply zone there on the AUDUSD. On to the USDCHF. Remember, we broke the downward trend line, giving us a nice weekly zone at 0.88, but we are in fact in a weekly supply zone. And I wouldn't say it's looking weak, but you can clearly see we are kind of wicking the candle. There's not, like, we had the initial green bullish candle, but these past 2 weeks just been basically an indecision candle in my opinion. So I think it's possible we do go from supply back to demand down to the weekly chart. It's definitely an option here on the USD Swiss. But if you look at the daily chart, we have it's basically a picture perfect daily uptrend at this point. Higher highs, demand zones being respected here, and being in control. This demand zone, very, very poor quality. We have seen a move off of it so far, and now that we're in for a second test, I think we could in fact retrace lower here. But just a reminder, as long as this trend line is holding on the daily chart, I think looking for longs is going to be fine, especially since we have that DXY uptrend at this point. Now on the 1-hour chart, we have a pretty nice 1-hour downtrend. It's not fantastic. I'm not a huge fan of this kind of fake out here. But look, the trend line is being respected. If you want to get in short, really the only thing I am seeing is to be day trading this downward trend line as long as the trend line is holding. I'm not saying to short at trend lines. I don't like that. As you can see, a lot of fake outs happen there. But what I am saying is, as long as this trend line is being respected, however you like to trade, whether it's supply and demand or whatever, as long as this downward trend line is being respected, we could in fact be looking for shorts. But I would actually stick to only a 5-minute chart or maybe a 1-minute chart, preferably the 5-minute. Just based on this 1-hour trend. If we had a 4-hour downtrend, then I would maybe add the 15-minute in there. But like I said, I would actually stick to the 5-minute time frame if you are looking for shorts. And I noticed this 4-hour zone down below here, we could see profit margin down to that 4-hour zone. So if you want to get in short, that would pretty much be it, the profit margin down to that zone. And if we start to break up to the upside here and we break this 4-hour supply zone, in my opinion, that would be pretty significant, because we're pretty much going sideways here. The overall trend is up, but since this supply zone broke a proven demand zone that also broke a proven supply zone, I would say that this is a very significant zone, and clearly there was supply up here as we wicked out of it almost twice. We couldn't even really hit it. There's so much supply up there. So if we break this 4-hour supply zone, any 4-hour demand zone there, we could be looking for longs. Remember, I will have that zone on the charts, on my charts as well, that you can get for becoming a member. So really hoping we can see the break of that supply zone there on the USD Swiss as we look to continue to trade this daily trend. And look, let's say we do really get a pullback here, the US dollar gets weaker, maybe you catch a nice day trade with this 1-hour downtrend like I'm talking about. That's fine. We have a few daily zones down here that we can get beautiful pullback entries to if you think the US dollar is going to continue to go up. And even the best backstop here, which would be the weekly demand zone, we could also be looking for longs in there as well. So I actually encourage a deep pullback here on the USD Swiss, especially since the DXY daily trend is looking pretty strong. Last but not least, we are on to crude oil. We did end up filling in this overall, I wouldn't call it a gap, but this space to the upside back to supply at 87.25. Now, I don't really think we're going to go all the way back down here, but since supply is in control here, we could start to see a little bit of downward pressure. Now look, the supply was pretty much broken here. I don't call that removed. I'm not going to get into why, but you can clearly see we tested it very, very deep. So I personally don't believe there's much supply left here, but I think we will at least hesitate to get to this area. But ultimately, I think we are going to break to the upside. And I mean, look at the trends here. We have beautiful daily trend. I think where we're going to have a lot of trouble getting through is this 89.03 area on the daily chart. If you want to get in short, this really would be our area. I wouldn't recommend just trading the daily supplies, and I know a lot of you guys aren't doing that anyways, but it could be a good area to look for maybe a quick 1-to-1, 2-to-1 trade on a day trading time frame, or even a 1-hour chart. But I mean, look at the trends to the upside. Beautiful looking trend here. The issue I'm seeing is for pullbacks, I'm not really seeing any fresh zones until all the way down at 83.64. There is kind of an area right at about 86. I think we will hesitate to get through there. I think it's a decent area to look for a potential pullback entry if you are bullish and you want to continue to get in long. And let's say we blast through the zone. No problem. We have a zone down at 83.64. We could look for longs in there as well. So, and remember, 4-hour uptrend as well. So as long as this trend line is holding, at any point we could be looking for day trading longs on a 15-minute chart or a 5-minute chart as well. And let's say we get a really, really deep pullback all the way down to $80.05. If you've been following my forecast the past couple weeks, I've been pointing out this zone. It's semi-decent. It's a little far away now, but we definitely could see a move off of that zone. But look, I don't want to confuse you guys. All signs are really pointing to the upside. We have to be a little bit cautious of that daily, weekly supply zone that I was pointing out. But ultimately, I think we will end up breaking the weekly supply and start to push up to the $100 a barrel again on crude oil. But it doesn't mean we won't see some pullbacks, which could definitely be used to fill in some long entries if you do believe we are pushing back to above $100 a barrel, which I personally do, especially with summer coming up. And if you guys want to watch the full length forecast with all the other markets, make sure to subscribe to the channel membership to get access.